Relationships can be tricky territory even at the best of times. And I think it's safe to say that we all agree that we're currently not in the best of times. And I think a lot of this comes from our assumption that relationships should row in with the utopian paradigm of, rosy kind of romance all day, every day. And it's not very reflective of reality because you will seldom find a relationship that doesn't trigger you. And I suppose the caveat to this entire conversation is that there are a lot of people who are in very unhealthy relationships, and particularly in the current situation, may find themselves feeling more isolated than ever before, feeling like they have no option in abusive situations. Perhaps their usual escape of work or school or whatever it is no longer available to them or their children. And I suppose it's worth noting that a lot of the organisations that help with domestic abuse, that help people who are in very tricky situations, are still available. And I'll be posting some of the contact numbers in my story later on. So just to recognise that you do not have to go through this alone, that there is help out there, and that just because there is a lockdown in place, it doesn't mean that you have to stay in the situation that you are in. There is always help to be found. But I suppose when it comes to relationships that aren't quite in that place, sometimes it's about deciding what you work on and deciding what you need to accept or indeed what you need to let go of, and it's recognizing that every relationship comes with a certain level of irritability and discomfort. I mean, we rock up to our relationships with all of the bullshit from our childhood, from our past relationships, and oftentimes it can very much color the way that we see the person that we're with. Likewise, we have very high expectations for them. We tend to put them up on this pedestal, again, this paradigm of our perfect person. And when they fall off that pedestal, all of a sudden we wonder if we're actually in the right relationship at all, and we can really begin to question ourselves. And I suppose it's recognizing that that sort of tension is part and parcel of any relationship, and oftentimes the tension is something that's coming up in you, something that's being triggered in you. And I heard this lovely description or way of looking at relationships the other day, which used the Four Noble Truths from the Buddhist tradition. And it was basically saying that, like life, relationships are bound to struggle. It's inevitable. And it's how we engage with that struggle that matters. It's how we repair our relationships. It's how we resolve our issues. It's how aware we are of our own role in the interactions that we have that really counts, and that really can improve our overall relationship satisfaction, because ultimately your life satisfaction is very much based on your relationship satisfaction. And the more you can come at it from a very realistic perspective and recognize that you can be in a place where you no longer feel all that loving towards your partner, because let's face it, it happens in relationships, but that you can still admire them, that you can still respect them, that you can still appreciate them, and that you can still apply a level of curiosity to what is going on for them, to what their perspective is on things, and that's an intimacy, that's a connection that goes deeper than the whole kind of superficial love and romance angle of it. And oftentimes when we feel extremely angry with our partner, it's actually an underlying sadness, and it could be a sadness from our past, and again we're layering the sadness or the disappointment of something that our partner did on top of that, and it can come out as very venomous. And it's recognizing where that's coming from, recognizing that extreme anger, lashing out, is not all that beneficial to anybody, nor indeed is stonewalling. I mean, it took a long time for me to recognize how abusive stonewalling can be. I always assumed because I wasn't outwardly aggressive that I was a wonderful partner, and yet I would withdraw to extremes. And it's really, really horrible for a partner to actually experience that. And that was a real eye opener for me, and something that I have to continue to work on. But again, it's about having the vulnerability to recognize your weaknesses and to try and do the work on them, to admit to them, to open up about all of your sadness and your fears and your disappointments and your frustrations, and try to solve them. Try to see your triggers as lessons, because again, an awful lot of our pain in life is relationally based. You know, it took place in the form of a relationship, and it almost needs to be healed in the context of the relationship. And I think again, there's this idea that you have to have all of the work done before somebody can love you. Well, the reality is we're never done working on ourselves, you know, and we really need to be very mindful of the fact that we need to continue evolving in our relationship. I mean, our relationship is going to transition many times over a lifetime, and we need to be okay with that. We cannot just stay in the one phase all the time. And again, that's somewhere that I've fallen down, you know, assuming that you can be in the honeymoon stage all of the time and nearly panicking when you're not, you know. And I think we make ourselves miserable as well, hoping that we can get back to where we were, or that, you know, after conflict that we can wish that it never happened, or we hold on to the hope that it never happened. And again, that's where the whole concept of radical acceptance comes in. You know, your relationship is going to take a battering every now and again, and it's about how you get through that. It's about whether or not you choose to go through it. It's about whether or not you want to go through it, because sometimes you're not going to want to. And it's recognizing when to let go and when to do the work, rather than kind of teetering in the middle, not wanting to be there but not actually doing anything about it. And that's where a lot of our suffering and our struggles come from. Whereas if you can take a very proactive approach to your relationship, you know, if you can nearly apply the concept of the serenity prayer, you know, accept things about your partner and about your relationship that you cannot change. And that doesn't mean you have to like them, but they're not going to change all that much. Have the courage to work on yourself, on the relationship, and ask your partner to do the same. And then having the discernment and the knowledge to know the difference, you know, because oftentimes I think, particularly in the current climate, there's going to be a lot of stresses and strains on a relationship that people aren't accustomed to. And they can really exacerbate or magnify any of the issues that you may have had, but you ignored because you always had a distraction or an outlet available to you. And it's recognizing that now is a time to examine the tension in your relationship and ask yourself, okay, is there a way that I can show up a little bit better? Is there a way that I need to review the way that I am in this relationship? Can I see things a little bit better from my partner's perspective? Are they really struggling with the current situation, you know? And again, it's the story that you're telling yourself about your relationship that causes oftentimes the most suffering. Your expectations for the other person. An expectation is always pretty damn close to a resentment or a disappointment. So it's being very realistic about what you want from them, what you expect from them, and being very honest about how you feel, creating a space for them, creating a space for vulnerability, creating a space for intimacy, and allowing for the tension and that happens as part and parcel of relationships, you know, the kind of ebb and flow of conflict and the resolution, you know, and the kind of the getting to know each other a little bit more and deepening that connection, as opposed to assuming that every sign of conflict or every disagreement means the end, you know. It's recognizing when each other is struggling and trying to allow each other to feel what you feel and meet the other person where they're at, as opposed to where you'd like them to be. And I suppose it's just trying to make the most of your love right now, because God knows there's enough negative stuff out there. There's a lot of loss, there's a lot of grief. We need each other. We need to hold on tight to the meaning and the joy and the love in our life more than ever. Hope everyone is staying well.